Good morning, Broncos country. We have some news to discuss on today's episode because the Broncos late last night made a couple of, we'll say, re-signings for the sake of simplicity, but it's technically tendering exclusive rights free agents. And I'll discuss what that means in English. But the five guys coming back to Denver: tight end Lucas Krull, who led all tight ends this past season; defensive tackle Jordan Jackson; outside linebacker Dondrea Tillman; corner Ja'Quan McMillian; and then safety Devon Key. So I want to go down the list here, talk about each single player coming back and whether or not it's a good move for the Broncos. But first, if you're wondering what the heck is an exclusive rights free agent, I'm going to explain that on today's episode as well. NFL free agency, though, is here. It is at our doorstep. The Broncos are already making some moves, and we are one subscriber away from 33,000 subs. So if you have not yet, scroll on down and click that sub button. Help us reach 33K here on the channel. So if you're wondering what the heck is an exclusive rights free agent, a tendered ERFA, exclusive rights free agent, is a 1-year league minimum contract. The player has two options. They can sign that contract or they can leave the NFL. That is it. Tendered ERFAs are for players who have played less than 3 full seasons and were undrafted, I believe. That's where the difference comes from someone who was like a 6th or 7th round draft pick. I don't know exactly why this exists, but I believe it is to reward teams who find good players after the draft as UDFAs, and then they don't lose them once their contract is up to bigger market teams. Not that big versus small market really plays a difference in the NFL like it does for baseball and basketball, but that's my best guess at it, although I'm not 100% sure. So in English, it is a league minimum 1-year contract, and the player has no other options. This is one of 3 types of free agents. The most common one is unrestricted free agent. This is your typical, hey, you drafted this guy, his 4-year rookie contract is up, and now he can re-sign with you or sign somewhere else. The other type that's maybe like the second most common is restricted free agents, which is the team that's having the player on their roster hit free agency has the right to match any contract offer from another team. And if they do match it, a team has to give them a draft pick for that player, which you hardly ever see happen. And then there's exclusive rights free agents, which is either they can come back to their team or they can go work a different job, because that's the only option is play for your team or leave the league if they tender you. So now let's run through the 5 players that Denver tendered, starting with, I'd say, the most notable name, and it's Ja'Quan McMillian, the guy who's been the starting nickel, the starting slot corner for the Broncos over the past 2 seasons. Remember, in 2023, he was just filling in for an injured K'Waun Williams, who went down with an ankle injury in training camp. We never saw Williams again because McMillian played super well, and Williams, I think, still had ankle issues into the season and ultimately missed all of 2023. But you can look at the numbers he had in his first 2 seasons as he hits free agency now, but he's not really hitting free agency because Denver just tendered him. But this is a very good cornerback room, and I think this is a great move for the Broncos. It's a 1-year, $1-ish million contract, an insane value for how good he is at what he does. He's an excellent run stopper. You can use him in blitz packages. He's also great in coverage, of course. Terrific ball skills. He's scored a couple of touchdowns for this team. So this was a no-brainer for the Broncos. Now, after this 1-year contract is up, I believe then he becomes an unrestricted free agent or something closer to that, and that's when he hopefully gets a bigger payday. So great move by Denver, and happy for McMillian, a guy who was undrafted, finally getting, a little bit of coin and cheddar, although it's not much early in his career. The next player I want to talk about is Dondrea Tillman, the defensive end/outside linebacker, we'll call him, who went to one of the coolest colleges out there. It's Indiana, Pennsylvania. I think it's in Pennsylvania, but it's called Indiana. I'm not really sure. But he was a UFL star. He was like the MVP or something for 2 seasons. The Broncos bring him in, and he pops off for 5 sacks. His number was called upon a couple of times this past year. Remember when Baron Browning was missing some time early in the season? It was Tillman and Nick Bonito and a little bit of Jonathan Cooper, and I mean, the guy popped off, like I said, for 5 sacks, 3 of which came against the Buccaneers, if I remember correctly, early in the season. So, yet again, it's a 1-year, $1-ish million contract, a no-brainer for someone who had some really good film, some really good tape this past season. Now, we're going to check out 3 other players that Denver tendered in just a moment here, but I do want to get your thoughts on this question on screen here. What do you think is more intriguing for you personally? The NFL draft or NFL free agency? I'm a draft junkie. I love the draft, but I know the draft can be a little bit more complex because it requires an added layer of research, checking out these guys in college and not just making your evaluations about them in the pros like free agency. So I'd go with draft, but let me know which one you prefer to kind of keep up and follow with more. The next player who might be I'd say the second most notable of the bunch after McMillian, is tight end Lucas Krull. 152 yards this past season, 19 grabs. Remember, he was the training camp / like mini camp prince. I remember there was a quote from Sean Payton about, hey, who was the best player this offseason during the workouts over the summer? Was it Lucas Krull? And Payton was like, no, it's Pat Surtain. What are you guys doing here? But media members kind of fall, victim to the fun, cool storylines of the backups who get a little bit more airtime during these summer workouts. Now, when we look at the Broncos tight end room, I don't expect it to look anything like this in 2025. They'll probably keep Trotman. And when I say look something like this, I mean, Dulcich is gone, but they're going to bring in a rookie who I expect them to select in the first 2 to 3 rounds of the draft. So we're going to have a big name come in at some point this offseason and probably move right to the top of the depth chart. But while they might keep Trotman and they're going to keep Krull for sure, Nate Atkins definitely competing for a job now, another UDFA himself who will be a free agent next year, and we'll see if he's tendered by the Broncos if he's still on the roster at that point. But I expect some more additions to be made at the tight end position. And then the fourth player that was tendered by Denver, defensive lineman Jordan Jackson. I didn't realize kind of how big-ish of a role he had last year. 27% of defensive snaps, so a quarter of the time he was out there. I knew he got some good runs, but I didn't realize it was 310 snaps on defense. So you got a nice backup coming back to your team, especially with DJ Jones, an unrestricted free agent. If you're unable to bring him back, having Jackson and Malcolm Roach and then making another addition in the draft or free agency should make you a little bit more comfortable trying to replace 93 after the strong 2024 season he had. So once again, I like this move for Denver. I like pretty much all these moves because it's good value. It's a 1-year league minimum deal, and all these players had decent enough roles this past year to warrant a very low, and by very low, I mean absolute minimum contract. Fifth and final player, who I think was probably the last one in of this bunch, is safety Devon Key. His second season with the Broncos this past year. He started a few games for Denver in 2024. PJ Locke, I'm not confident will be back in 2024. De'Aaron Turner-Yell missed all of 2024, recovering from an ACL injury the prior season. J.L. Skinner, the fifth-round pick out of Boise State, has not really blossomed on defense. So you could look at the safety room and go, outside of now Key coming back, there's only one sure thing with Brandon Jones. Not the worst thing in the world to re-sign a safety who showed some really good stuff in the preseason. Remember, Key in the 2024 preseason was one of the biggest winners. He was making plays. He was causing takeaways. So I'm in for him coming back and building off this past season and probably having a bit of a larger role in 2025 than he did in 2024. Before we sign off, make sure you check out this awesome Broncos winter hat. Go to chatsports.com/DEN hat. I put this link in the comments and description of today's video. So if you want to get some Broncos gear that is 70% off, I'm talking less than $10, use our link, chatsports.com/DEN hat. Once again, all of that information is in the comments and description of today's video. So to wrap up today's episode, let's do a random Broncos backup. After all, these guys are, except for McMillian, all backups. So in the spirit of next man up mentality, Name a random Broncos backup. I'm going to try and do a deeper cut this time. No, I don't want to do that. Okay, I got one. You ready? Here we go. I'm going to cut down from, we'll see if we say the same person. 3, 2, 1. Brock Osweiler. That counts as a backup. I mean, he started a little bit here and there, but he's a Broncos backup. So let me know if you said Brock as well, whoever you said down below in the comment section. As always, make sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm not sure if there's another Broncos YouTube channel out there that's going to get you guys a video on these moves before even noon on Wednesday. So if you are looking for a go-to Broncos channel for all of free agency, make sure to subscribe and like the video to help the algorithm out.